Hello, Dr. Rob.
Hey, Tammy, I'm sane now. I had my sanity walk. I'm ready for questions. You
I
look
love
great,
that
by the
you.
way.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes, I did a little more work with my eye makeup today. I took 2 extra minutes, so but
mine
thank you.
never turns out right, no matter how hard I try. So there you go.
Practice, practice.
All
Okay.
right, here
First
we go.
question is it's the very bottom one on the answered. Are you with me? I hate when his oops, he left. He'll be back. Hang on. I swear, sometimes there he is. Hi.
Now you crashed. Okay, you'll have to read the
Uh,
question because I don't have
okay.
it
I
now.
I okay. So it's in answered. You don't see it?
No, once I get off, I can't. So
Okay.
let's just
Okay.
read through.
So yes. So this is from the addict. I've been in 12 step for over 3 years. I'm sexually sober. Kicking the lying is the biggest struggle right now. I've read books. I bring it to groups and with my wife specifically. I bend reality. It's at a point where we will have to separate if I don't change. Therapy is not possible financially at this time. 80 guidance would help to become a man of integrity, not just for my wife and kids, but for my life.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
And I think, a lot of it for the men that we work with in seeking integrity, I've noticed comes, and I don't know if that's true for this person, but from having abusive experiences growing up where if they didn't tell the right story or they didn't say it in the right way or bad things were going to happen. And so it's so automatic to just say the thing that won't get me in trouble. And especially looking at that angry face or what I perceive as an angry face, anyway, we have a rule. For me, it is 24 hours. And I just talk about it with my spouse. I'm like, I think telling the truth is really difficult in the moment. So what I ask of you is whatever I say, just know that I will come back to you in 24 hours and I will tell you the truth. And you can even write it in an email or a piece of paper if you don't want to say it directly. I mean, I think what I hear from most of the spouses is they just want to know what's going on. They just want us to be honest. We have a saying that I got from Sharon O'Hara that is tell the truth and tell it faster. But that doesn't mean that you have to tell it. It's as fast as you can do it. So I think this is a conversation for you to have with your wife when there is an anger or upset, and then you have to practice it. And woe to the person who doesn't get back in 24 hours. And again, I like this idea. I thought of it. Maybe you can't face her right then. Could you write it down? Could you, let her know this is on my mind. I just want you to know. In other words, you may need some space, and that's okay as long as you both agree and she understands. But I agree, the worst thing you can do if you want to restore trust is tell someone I'm taking out the garbage and don't. Because spouses think, well, if they don't even tell me when they took out the garbage, then why would I ever expect them to tell me about bigger things? So, and by the way, so it makes your spouse feel less trusting. And overall, it isn't just that you forgot to buy the
Dr. Rob. Sorry. I think,
well for you.
well,
Tammy, are you frozen? No.
I think you were frozen, but I guess I don't know which one of us. One of us was frozen, so you're back. But you were like the worst thing you can do is, say
No,
I'm
it
taking out the
is,
trash.
and not do it. Or
Yes.
say, oh, I remember to buy you those tomatoes, but then, and they must have fallen out of the bag,
Yeah.
but you forgot. What I was saying was, if you want someone to begin to trust you again, that the little things matter. Because if they catch you in a lie, then it isn't just you're lying about the tomatoes, it's what else are they lying about? And it becomes global, because if I can't trust you with the tomatoes, how can I trust you with if you're seeing someone or acting out? Or so you're right, every little truth matters, every little lie matters if you want to rebuild trust. But you need to find a way to communicate and talk about it. You may need to talk to a sponsor or a therapist and say, this happened and I lied about, get it out, clear it up, and go back and tell the truth.
Well, and I had this thought of like, there's always something behind why I'm not telling the truth. I'm afraid or whatever. So maybe you even write down, like, I'm afraid to tell you the truth because I'm afraid of
Right.
your reaction. I'm afraid to hurt you. I'm afraid of whatever. There's something in it for you to lie. It's like, in the moment, at least, it's the escape from, like, oh, I don't want to deal with those negative consequences. Well, but look what happens. And so I kind of wonder if you journaled that and go, I lied or told a half truth, or lies of omission are just as bad about this. And what's in it for me? What was my, why did I do this? And how can I, come back around to the truth? And I agree with Dr. Rob that, the 24-hour rule, and it's probably going to be 23 hours, 59 minutes, the first time. But hopefully, as you start going, oh, wait, this is actually a good thing and this is working for me. And so then it narrows that window of time.
I wanted to add something you said, and something that if you're doing the things you said should be very familiar to you. This is a 12-step issue. This is a character defect. It really is. And so I think you could take it into your 4-step work and write it out and understand what's underneath it and work with a sponsor. I mean, you know those things. Hopefully you're working the steps. You've just run into a new character defect. Start working on it. So why don't we move
Yeah,
on
no,
to, I want
well,
to get
and
everybody
that's,
tonight.
yeah.
Go ahead.
So the
No,
next
go
one is
ahead.
how do, no, because I was going to say, yeah, that's, yeah, it's, if you're working your 4th step, working your 5th step, lying is throughout. Like, there's a lot of stuff in the big book about lying, and that's all free. So if, that's a free resource. And our drop-in groups, bring that. And I
Mhm.
would really encourage you. I was thinking too, with Troy Loves, there's like, what I hear is, he talks about the politician, because the politician is, I want to make everything look good. I have to look good. And so that may be useful for you too. So check out his free drop-in group on Friday mornings. Because, those voices of shame, the judge, you never do it right, but the politician, oh, just don't let them see behind the curtain. Okay, the next question, Dr. Rob, is how do I train myself to push away intrusive thoughts about limerence objects?
Well, limerent, I had to look it up to see if it's a word, and it is, so it's about intensity. And so I don't know what an object is. Do you think it means a person?
I
What
think
do you
it
think
does
it
mean a
means,
person.
Tammy?
Yeah, I think
So,
they're objectifying a person. So,
well, there are lots of things. I mean, there are behavior things, which is like the 3-second rule. At first I look at them and I acknowledge that that's someone attractive or I'm interested, and then I look away. And then I think well of them, or think of them as someone's daughter or son, or I pray for them. Um, I, I think talking about it is really important. Not just this question, but who are you telling? I find myself, and limerence, by the way, to me is more about relationship than it is about sex. So it's more like a kind of love addiction thing, which is I find myself longing for someone and seeing everything special in them and not seeing any of the bad. It says something like a state of infatuation or obsession with another person that involves all-consuming passion and intrusive thoughts. So you are correct. You also might write it, talk to people about it. Um, what I found about, at least for me, with intrusive thoughts about acting out sexually is give yourself an hour or two. Tell somebody about it. But, sometimes for addicts, what's in front of us feels like the thing we're got to do right now. It's amazing to me if you just give it a little time, if you just chat with someone, if you just go for a sanity walk, you also might accept the fact that you get obsessed with people instead of fighting yourself, train myself to push away. It's sort of like get rid of my addiction. You're not get rid of your addiction, but how do you learn to build a relationship with it? And find ways to understand it, because what that is saying is um, um, I, I am needful of something. I
mm,
need something. Now, in my mind, when I'm looking at someone for as a sex addict, I'm like, I need that. But but what I know about myself in recovery is it means there's something going on inside of me. And the need is almost always to connect with a person. I need to talk about something. I need to call someone. I've got something on my mind. But we sexualize everything. So I think in this case, we also kind of, I don't say emotionalize or objectify in a whole variety of ways. Um, so I don't think it's a training. I think it's about acceptance and then taking other actions. I think Tammy will agree that addicts rarely recover when we're by just not doing things. Yeah, I'm not going to look at that. I'm not going to look at that. All I want to
yeah,
do is look at it. But what else am I
exactly.
going? Am I going to do X? Am I going to call someone? Am I going to go for, what can you do? Tammy, you were going to jump on that. So
No, yeah, exactly. I was like, like what's in your outer circle? What are the things that are healthy? I mean, it's like, and have a plan, because this is like when you're in the moment of, like of that hyper focus, what is your plan? So when I'm not in that, I have my little plan of this. These are the things that I can do, and I'd have a bunch of different ones. Call somebody, or I mean, whatever it is, do a mindfulness. I have my 2 minute breathing thing that really helps ground me. I have people that, Dr. Rob, I hear this all the time about people who have your Sex, Love, and Addiction podcast, like probably handy. So they just put that in and listen. But even if you listen to 5 minutes of that, guess what? You're refocusing things. So having a plan of like, these are the things I'm going to do. And one of these is going to work. I may not be able to reach somebody right in that moment, but even texting someone and going, I'm having a little struggling moment, will help take the pressure off. But I really agree with you too. The more I focus on, this, then the more I'm focused on, like the more I focus on not doing something, the more I'm focused on it. So it really is, how do I shift my focus away from that? But having a plan for, these are the things that I can do, and you can add more to it. But it really is, what's in your healthy circle? Because, we talk about, you sliding through the circles. Well, if you're starting to focus on those things, that's probably, I'm slipping into it. So what is that doing for you? Like Dr. Rob said, there's something that's going on for me. I'm uncomfortable, and I'm looking to escape. What else can I choose that would be healthy for me?
and I want to say that every addict, when I feel like acting out, I need to pay attention. But it's not that I go need to act out. It's like the little part of me pulling on my sleeve saying, I need attention. I need to look at something. We just assume we're horny or we want a piece of whatever that is. If I get into I'm not going to ever, I can't say this isn't a double negative. I'm always on some level going to want to act out. But if I understand it to be a message and to be information rather than I've got to go do this, and we call this, by the way, Tammy, as you know, relapse prevention. What am I going to do instead? What does this message mean to me? Um, to me, those, and I agree, that's the road. That is the road. So what do we got?
The next one is, as a betrayed partner, how do I overcome my disgust of PM and SAs, porn, masturbation, and sex addicts acting out behaviors? It's been 8 months since formal therapeutic disclosure and 3 years since original discovery. I cycle through anger, sadness, etc. Now disgust seems forefront. My husband is in good recovery.
Well, I'm writing down a whole bunch of things. First of all, to your craziness, and we talk about this a lot, is the idea of ambivalent love, which is one, and it makes people crazy. And I have to explain to partners, like, crazy is your new normal, because you're going to look at that person and you're going to say, oh, look at them washing my car, and they're so cute, and they're hosing down the kid, or whatever it is. And then you're going to look at them later in the day, you're going to say, how could you do this to me? I hate you. And we go back and forth, and it could be in 5 minutes and it could be in 2 days. So I think you have to just with that part accept that that your beliefs have changed, that sometimes you hold on to them, sometimes you see reality, and you have to be kinder to yourself. I also don't think 8 months is a particularly long time because you've had, is that right? Full disclosure, 8 months ago, is that what I heard,
Yes.
Tammy? So that's not a very long time. And to expect yourself to have moved on from anger and disappointment and hurt and disgust in 8 months, I think is not really being fair to you. You are someone who should be going to some of the free partners groups. I think hearing where other partners are, it's been 8 months since, I can tell you, but I think if another partner says, it's been this amount of time or that amount of time, I think it would really be helpful. Was there something else I want to say? Oh, we teach a course called Out of the Doghouse. It's followed by a book. It's related to a book I wrote, which is about how men who cheat can create a path to healing for their relationship. That's what out of the dog, literally they're in the doghouse. They want them to get out of the doghouse. It doesn't mean just because he's in recovery that he knows how to be empathic, that he knows how to be reflective, that he knows how to make up for the past, and so as we've said often, you can stop acting out, but it doesn't mean you're a better person. And that takes time. So I think Out of the Doghouse is a great thing to read or take a course and understand what empathy really looks like and what stages and how do I go through that. Um, by the way, Tammy, we did an empathy group. I taught Out of the Doghouse today to the guys at Seeking Integrity, and their jaws dropped. They're like, "Oh, is that how you make someone feel better? You mean you don't argue or give them presents or try to convince them that it isn't as bad? You just listen?" And like they had no clue. And so I think it's something that addicts need to learn about. Empathy has not come naturally to us. What comes naturally to us is I want to do what I want to do when I want to do it and leave me alone. Um, anyway, that's that one.
Well, I want to just tag on to this because the disgust, because and I hear it about, and at least it's you have it about the behaviors, which that's that I can appreciate, and that it's not you're disgusted with him as a person. One of the things I think can be helpful just to have a little tiny bit of understanding is the level of his brokenness, and if he probably learned this as a maladaptive coping mechanism, yeah, at under age 10. So if you look at an 8-year-old boy and go, is that person doing that intentionally to me as he grew up? No, but it was he really wounded? Was there something that just didn't work right, for him to grow up to be a healthy person, to be able to do what a healthy person can do with empathy, and not turn to acting out behaviors that are so hurtful to partners. So again, not trying to, I agree with Dr. Rob, you are where you're at. Grief, it's really, there's grief with this, grieving the loss of the partner you hoped for, grieving the loss of the marriage you thought you had, all of those things. I just shared with somebody a little while ago, Debbie McRae did a 2-part series on grief. And I think just understanding that's part of your journey, and it's, it just is the reality. But, as you move through that, the feelings will lessen, but giving yourself the space of like, yeah, I'm angry now, I'm hurt, I'm sad, I'm disgusted, I'm whatever. And then, but I see his recovery. Like all of that's true. It's kind of the paradox of all of that. I did put in the chat, both Dr. Rob mentioned the work group for Out of the Doghouse, but I also, the Betrayed Partner, there's only a couple spots left. That starts again June 14th. Angela Spearman does a great job with those, and it's healthy boundaries and communication, and I mean, like, it's really solid content, and I think you would find that helpful as you're processing through this as well. So those are psychoeducation, not therapy, not treatment, but low cost. Those are 6-week live facilitated, not just watching a video or something. Really good connection, and we hear good things about all of those work groups. Sex Addiction 101 and Porn Addiction 101, we run every month, but the others, you'll see the schedule. So ready for the next one?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I recently learned of my husband's addiction through a therapeutic full disclosure. Unfortunately, 2 months in, I learned he did not disclose everything and has been continuing to act out, spent tens of thousands on sex workers. He is obviously in active addiction, even though I thought he was working on recovery. He has been attending 12-step group meetings and CSAT sessions. However, it does not seem to be enough working. How should I approach the recommendation with inpatient for him?
Well, Tam, I'm gonna let you start with this one because you speak to couples all the time with
I
this issue.
do. Yeah. And honestly, I mean, there's the angry way of doing it, but what I really find most effective is, and it's heartfelt. It's like, this is so painful to me to watch you self-destruct and to hurt our relationship. And I can't, for myself, I can't continue to do that. So setting healthy boundaries for you. And we talk a lot about that. I've got webinars and things like that on, and again, that work group that starts, how do you set a healthy boundary for your safety? It's not punitive against the other person, but to do it from the, I love you, I care about you, I vision us having a future together, but we can't, you can't have a relationship that can't be built on any, on any trust. And you're right, that if all of those things aren't working, then a higher level of help, would be beneficial and would be the next step. So that's the clients that we
Right,
work
Tammy.
with are, yeah, Tammy, TAMI at seekingintegrity.com, or call me about that too. But there is no more expert clinical program, no more expert clinical team to work with these specific issues. This is the only work that they do. They're not, 100-bed hospital campus, this is the work. And they do life-changing work for the guys that are willing to come and get the help. And we do have a family specialist, that is able to support partners, and this is because the goal is healthy attachment and healing, for the long haul. I hear, and I'm going to shut up after this, but, I hear life-changing from the clients. I care more when I hear that from partners and spouses, that they see he has changed. And it's not magical, there's no magic fix, but they see that he's different. They see that he's showing up differently, like Dr. Rob talked about. Well, and like, you say you take out the trash, you take out the trash, that difference in accountability. I can't hear you. Your lips move, but I can't hear what you say. Pink Floyd. Sorry for the technical difficulties, but so while Dr. Rob comes back, we have varying lengths of treatment at Seeking Integrity, 14, 21, or 28 days. I'll be honest with you, when people are in a relationship and there's crisis, 21 days is a much better option. Then if people go, I want to come for 14 days. Well, every addict wants to get, poof, as fast as possible. But what I say is you need to plan to do this. I often say, if we're not your first treatment program, we want to be your last. We want you to have the healing and the help that you need to be successful with this for the long haul. This is a chronic condition. This is not gonna, I talked to somebody earlier today and they're like, well, I don't even think about acting out. And I'm like, massive red flags. I don't care. Like it's just around the corner for you, and you're going to relapse on something, so we want you to get the help holistically that you need to be successful for the long haul. So, and there went Dr. Rob again. So Tammy, TAMI at seekingintegrity.com if you've got questions about that. Quick, say something.
It's going to be one of those nights, Tammy. I'm doing my best, but I did want to say something else about that question, which is I do 2-hour consultations with couples. I don't know. Did you mention that, Tammy?
I did not. So please.
Yeah, and I sit down, Tammy makes appointments. I sit down and, I'm a bit of a truth teller. Some of you might know I don't pull punches. And it's pretty typically a spouse who is asked for this consultation and they kind of drag their husband or wife along. And I'm very clear, if and honest, if I feel like, well, you just need to go to our meetings, or you need to read this book, or you need to take one of our courses, that's what you'll hear. But if it's residential, especially if look, the addict's goal should be to make, and other than recovery, is to make you feel better. If what makes you feel better is for them to be out of the house for 3 weeks, they're not wandering around, they're not in a hotel, they're not, they're with us 24/7, we're watching them. It's really up to you. I tell you, spouses, you're driving the boat. You can say, this is what will make me more comfortable. And they can fight, and they can argue, and they can disagree, but you can't disagree with, this will make me feel safer. And not you need to do this, but I am very unhappy and very hurt, and this isn't getting any better. And if that isn't working, feel free to come visit me. And I usually have a reasonably good way of encouraging these people to make those decisions. But if you're ready, you should call Tammy or reach out. By the way, we call it a continuum of care. So it goes, first it might be reading a book, then it might be going to a 12-step program, then it might be going to therapy, then it might be going to some kind of workshop or intensive. And at some point you end up saying, all of that is not enough. I need to go to this level of care. People often say, well, what do I need to do if they first involved with this? And I will say, go see a good therapist, go start a few groups. In other words, you don't have to go all the way here. Although I will say at the other end that there's nothing wrong with taking a bath in this work. You do not need to have started at the beginning, especially those, excuse me to be ageist, but those men over 45 who, if you're or 50, you've had your whole life to deal with this. Now you don't have so much time left. I'm not sure I would want to go once a week to a therapist, and I would want to do the quickest, most opportune way I can get the most out of it, and then take that out and put it in the world into practice. So and we get people who are in crisis and they've never been before, and we get people who have done everything they can and now they're at the next step. So I think that's it. Uh,
I'm going to tag on to what you just said though too, but for some people their relationship is in crisis, and going to a therapist once a week for 2 years, and trying to figure this out like is intolerable, or their relationship won't sustain. So don't go do couples therapy. We talk about this all the time because everybody reaches out and, oh, we need a couples therapist, and I start with, talk to each of your individual therapists. We don't have any. Start with individual, and so we have to go through the whole process. So it depends on where you're at, but for those that have the ability to do so, man, getting that solid foundation. I for one, had I not gone to residential treatment, you're muted, Dr. Rob. If I had not gone to treatment, I know for sure I would have relapsed. I got the foundation that I needed to be able to sustain, and I got the help I needed. So our goal is to have you have the plan and the support to be successful in recovery for the long haul. So, okay.
Well, I like what Tammy says about our work, which is we provide resources, and whatever that resource is, and you all know, you will reach out to Tammy and she'll say, read this book or go to this free group, or, I think that certainly is my goal, is not necessarily to haul people into treatment, but to give them the podcast. And again, I guess I want to say this, there's so many people who can't afford or don't have the resources to go to therapy. They don't have the time to go to a meet. They may not be able to go to treatment, but you can listen to all the podcasts. You can watch all the stuff on YouTube. We even have TikTok videos, which are looking really good, by the way. I don't know if you did that, but
I'm not a TikToker. It's just like,
no, but they were put up there.
Yes.
Because not everyone wants. When we started talking about podcasts, at that time there were fashion and movies, and I thought people want meaningful content. And now we have, I don't know, millions of downloads.
1.3 million was the last number I was seeing. So yeah.
So to me, it's the same with TikTok. It's like something started, and it's fun and games, but you put something serious on there, and there will people who will come look for it. And so anyway, we're in lots of places. Feel free to reach out.
Yes, but just listening to a podcast, like Dr. Rob talks about this all the time, we heal in community. And that's whether you're a betrayed partner, you need the support of other people, or the person struggling with addiction. If you could just read a book or listen to a podcast and magically change, you do that, but that's not how it works. So we learn to have empathy in connecting with other people. We learn to normalize this stuff and to be able to turn to others. So it really is. We've got drop-in groups at all different, days and times. So we've got all kinds of resources, but I want to be really clear. Those are all great. I love the podcast, all of the webinars, but you being here live, you're interacting. Join the drop-in groups, join the online work groups. Those are connected, so that you are able to be part of the community as well. So,
hey, Tammy, so the next one that you put in answered is really just a thank you for something we said earlier. So you're welcome, and we do the best that we can. And we always say, take what you like and leave the rest. But yeah, let's go on.
Okay. So then the next one is, I'm a betrayed partner of a porn addict, 16 years married, and D-Day was 60 days ago. We are working on full disclosure prep. Take some time. He is 59 days sober. He has accountability check-in. He joins couples therapy weekly with me, and he meets weekly with an LMFT about childhood issues and maturity issues. But he isn't in 12-step group. While I'm working on healing from betrayal trauma, am I asking too much for him to get into a 12-step group? Oh, so I'm having a reaction to this one.
So I don't think I fully heard that. So why don't you give me but you react.
All right, I'm going to calmly. So you're doing a formal therapeutic disclosure, and I'm not hearing any qualified professionals in this. You're doing couples therapy, which I just kind of threw in a little while ago. I mean, he's 59 days in to sobriety. Like, we don't recommend couples therapy. There's a lot of reasons. We've talked about that and other things. He's meeting with an LMFT about childhood issues, maturity issues. Yes, I want you to speak to that. And he isn't in 12-step group. And she's asking, am I asking too much for him to go to 12-step group? And I'm going, this feels all backwards and upside down to me. So quick before your technology quits.
Well,
there it goes. Okay, so here's the deal. Oh, here, he's going to come back. So We don't recommend couples therapy early in the process. We recommend a qualified professional. An LMFT is not trained to work with these issues. We say this all the time too. It's like having cancer and you're going to your general practitioner rather than the cancer specialist. This stuff is complicated. This stuff is hard. You want the best help that you can possibly get to work with these issues. So I don't know who's leading the formal therapeutic disclosure. Dr. Rob does a peer case consultation group every week with professionals who are trained to do this work. Guess what the number one topic is? Almost every week, formal therapeutic disclosure comes up. So that means with the trained professionals who are doing this work, have been trained to do this work, this is still complicated. So my concern is you're setting yourselves up to have a less than desirable experience, by doing this. Everybody gets to pick. So you're here, I don't know you, I'm just saying stuff from experience. Him working on his early trauma, again,
I was going to say something about that.
please, quick, before you go.
By the way, no, I restarted my computer. I'm hoping that will
Okay.
go better.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'm pick up my phone and use that.
Okay.
There are many good therapists, just like there are many, many good doctors, physicians. I went to my doctor for many, many years. I was having some problems. I would get very dizzy when I would stand up. And he said, blood pressure, blood pressure, blood pressure. And I went to another doctor. He said, that's not the problem. And so I didn't realize that I needed to see someone who really specialized in the issues that I was dealing with. And I think that there are many amazing therapists out there who do, and Tammy, we know them, do incredible trauma work and psychoanalysis and Jungian and somatic. But if you're an addict, you're going to act out when you drop a pencil. And part of looking at the past is it's going to make you anxious. It's going to give you a lot to think about. You might have bad dreams or start to, things come up. And so sobriety first. You have to have time. And if that therapist, and it's often the case, does not understand the nature of addiction. For example, I could be an alcoholic and I don't really tell them much about my drinking, and they want to look at my trauma issues. Well, every time I leave therapy, I go have a drink. I'm never really going to get underneath those issues because I drink them away. So I absolutely think once we tackle the addiction piece, and I myself am really taking it on and doing the right things and have some time, then it may be helpful to begin to look at trauma issues. So to me, this feels way too early, and maybe that they're not seeing the right professional.
Thank you. That's what I was, but yes, 12, and at some point it's like, again, I briefly touched on healthy boundaries for my safety, in order to close this gap, there's a gap in your relationship. That's just, he's created the distance. So how do you work on closing that gap? I would feel better about, about working towards, the relationship with you if I saw actions by you, including 12-step, our drop-in groups, our online work group. Again, the Sex Addiction 101 starts June 24th. I put a link, to that. Those are actionable things. You can see, the work. If he's seeing an LMFT that isn't even trained in these things, and he's doing that once a week, so a 50-minute session once a week, that with someone who's not trained to do that for something that's decades old, 24/7 issues, it's not enough. So my concern for you, betrayed partner, is, somebody mentioned earlier, the cycle of like, he lied and, we did a formal therapeutic disclosure and he was still acting out and all of these negative things, so I want to make sure that you're setting your expectations up and there's accountability for success on this journey.
And I want to validate your spouse. There may be nothing wrong with what he or she are doing. And they can say to you, I'm going to therapy. I'm doing.
I can't hear you. He'll be back. Again, we have lots of resources. I would love to have you join the Betrayed Partner work group that starts June 14th. I put it in the chat. I think you'd have a bunch of resources. They talk about disclosure. Angela Spearman is the host for that one, the facilitator, and she does talk about formal therapeutic disclosure. I can't remember if it's in part 1 or part 2, but she does talk about that as well, and what the process is and expectations. But you having separate support for you as part of the formal therapeutic disclosure, it's a whole process, and having each of you have the support that you need, to be successful with that would be important. And as for 12-step groups, we have a bunch of them listed on our website. There's SA, SAA, SPAA, SLAA, PAPAA. There's a bunch of different ones, and there's links to the various ones so that you can find, he can find what's a fit for him. But, I just shared with somebody earlier today too, it's recommended 90 meetings in 90 days to get a foundation, get a sponsor, to start working on the steps, because, this is a change of everything that we've known to do. We're looking to do things differently if we really want to be on a recovery journey. But as with most addicts, we will only do things if I say if the pain of change is less than the pain of staying the same, then we'll make progress. But otherwise, we're going to go, no, I don't want. I'm going to hang on. You're flying now, Dr. Rob.
Yeah, did you see I left and went to the moon?
I see that, but I'm glad you're here. You're muted. You just muted. I think you hit your mute button. There you go.
I'm working on my phone so that maybe that issue will go around.
But you're great. I'm glad you're here.
Of course. Thank you. What's next?
So, all right. My husband is still experiencing heavy betrayal trauma. We are 8 months from my disclosure and 9 months from my infidelity. I can't get over the thought that I will break him beyond repair if I am honest about when I have intrusive thoughts as a love addict.
I'm not sure exactly what they're saying. Can you help me?
I can help you. Yes. It's like, as the betrayer,
right.
Like I've really hurt my betrayed partner, and I have intrusive thoughts, and there's an appearance by this that I should tell you every single time I have an intrusive thought. That's part of my accountability with you, is I need to tell you every time I have an
I actually think
intrusive
this
thought.
is a partner. I think this is a partner.
No.
It says betrayed partner 2 years since recovery, 4 months since FTD. Is that what you're reading?
I can't get over the thought that I will break him beyond repair if I am honest when I have intrusive thoughts as a love addict. So no, this is from the addict about, if I tell my betrayed partner that I'm having intrusive thoughts as a love addict, it's going to hurt my partner so much.
Well, I think intrusive thoughts are part of the game. And I would not say to myself, what's wrong with me? Actually, I would say, what's wrong with you if you're not having intrusive thoughts? I mean, that is part of the.
But do you think should you tell your betrayed partner every time you have an intrusive thought?
No. I think
that's what I want you to talk about.
Thank you. We do not, and I know spouses, you do not like when I say this, but it is really important that you listen to me. You need to avoid being the thought police. You need to avoid being your partner's parole officer. You'll never have a meaningful relationship if every time I think about something, I come running to you and say, I saw this person, I found them really attractive, and they were going down the grocery aisle, and it's not going to help your relationship. Every spouse thinks, if I just know that, you think, and I get this, believe me, years and years of this work, and I have empathy, believe me. If I just understand the answer to this question, I'm going to feel better. But the reality is questions just bring up more questions, because you're not going to feel better no matter how many answers you have. And I understand as a spouse, you want to hear every word of everything that's gone on. But if you ever want to have a stable, meaningful relationship, you need to start to believing that they will deal with their issues. They're going to take their questions. I have an intrusive thought and I'm an addict. I call my sponsor. I call someone in my recovery program. I say, I had this thought and I really angered myself and it scared me. And I have a conversation with them. What I do need to tell you is any serious violations of my recovery. So I have we call it circle plan, you might call it sobriety plan, but I have committed to A, B, C, D, E as this is my sobriety, because it's not like drugs and alcohol where you can just say it's on or it's off. We create plans. And if I break a commit, I look at porn, I've committed to not look at porn, I need to let you know. And even then, oops, Tammy.
I can hear you. Keep going.
And even then, I may need to, even if I've acted out, I may need to go to my therapist or sponsor and say, I just acted out, I'm really freaking out, and tell you in 24 hours. Because what I don't want the addict to do is come and vomit it all. It's not your job to make us feel better. And when we act out, we feel often very shameful or self-hating or upset with ourselves. And I think we need to sometimes bounce that off other people so we don't put that all over you. Are you here, Tammy?
I am, and I agree.
Okay.
I'm nodding my head. I'm nodding my head in alignment with you. So yes, yeah,
And I'm
that,
sorry, spouses. I know that you want to hear. I'm turned off my video. I know
yeah,
spouses, you want to hear every word and you want to know everything, but it really is not going to comfort you. What Tammy said earlier, our actions will comfort you. Are we going to 12-step meetings? Are we going to therapy? Are we reaching out and moving toward that disclosure? That is what will make you feel safer and more comfortable.
yeah. Well, and what this question was, I think, he's fragile, and I'm afraid I'm going to break him. And you know what? If all of the focus is always on your addiction and your thoughts and your whatever, you know what, there's no space for growing the relationship or any joy in either of your lives. I really think having healthy boundaries for a partner of like, I need you to take care of yourself. We on our website we have like the Thanos check-in. That's a good check in. I'm having a stressful day, I'm having a little tough day, and I'm going to go talk to my therapist about it, I'm going to go talk to my sponsor. Great. But it is not, you are not each other's sole support. That's why, I stressed a few minutes ago about like, you need a community of people so that you've got safe places to talk about these things, and then you guys can come back in a different way. Okay, next
Oh, I
question,
know
Dr.
what I
Rob.
can do.
What?
I can turn off Wi-Fi. There we go.
Are you on the are you ready for the next
Well,
question?
can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
So what I
You
did
sound like
was
a
I turned
commercial.
off Wi-Fi. So
Oh,
now
good.
I'm running on the phone,
You're on
so I should be
cellular.
fine.
That sounds better. Okay. Betrayed partner, 2 years since last discovery, 4 months since formal therapeutic disclosure. I hear a lot of betrayed partners say their partners are in good recovery. What does that mean for him? For me, I feel like I'm ready for couples work, but my spouse, even though he is sober now, says he is struggling to do the relational work due to severe ADHD and challenges with executive function. The road has been so long to get him sober, and now I feel like it will be years for him to finally face ADHD. I'm very tired. How do I hang on?
Well, there are different things being talked about here, but ADHD is a serious mental health issue. And it's interesting because Tammy can validate this. There's all kinds of research on what mental health issues seem to be related to sex addiction. And the one thing that we absolutely know is 20% or so of sex addicts have attention deficit disorder. So it's going to be very, very difficult to do anything unless he has gotten that managed. And I've seen so many psychiatrists do a bad job with it. So I do understand that these are difficult things when, for example, I am married. Can you see me by the way, Tammy?
I
Am I
can,
not sure
yes,
you
I
can.
can see and hear
Okay.
you. I'll just nod in
So
every now and then.
I will just tell you that I'll say very gently, I'm married to someone who's a little bit on the spectrum, which means he doesn't always get social signals. So I will start to say, this really bothered me. And he'll get incredibly defensive because he misses the fact that I'm just trying to help us do better. And I'm not saying you didn't do this. I'm saying, when you didn't do this, I kind of felt. So it's kind of the same with ADD. You're only going to get so far with somebody who has an active issue. I'll tell you what to do about this. So since I live with someone who has ADD and there's a little spectrumy. So what I did was I went out and found a couple of books, and they're out there that says, how do couples get along when one of you has ADHD? How do you, and I'll give you an example of my relationship. And Tammy, you have to say I'm there, otherwise maybe I can see
You're
you.
there. I hear you.
Okay.
Keep
So,
going.
okay, there we go. So, this is how it used to work for me. My spouse has ADHD, and he used to come home and he'd leave clothes on the floor on his way to the kitchen, and then he'd start cooking something. He left all the dishes in the sink, and then the next thing he was on the computer, and nothing was ever quite finished. After a while, I started thinking, well, if you loved me, you would
Right.
understand how important this is to me. If you loved me, you would pick up the clothes. If you loved me, and then I realized it's a problem. And once I was able to understand that that wasn't about not meeting my needs the way I wanted them met. It was that I had to have empathy. We had to set up a way of living together where the keys always went in the same place every week,
Right.
where there was a little note that said, "Are your clothes on the floor?" We had to find ways to work around the psychiatric or psychological issue. And I think just having those tips in other areas will really help the rest of it go better. I'm not fully answering the question, but I can tell you what helped for me is there is a lot of material. Go on YouTube. How does a couple make a better relationship when one of us has a profound ADD issue, or ADHD? And as I said, 20% of us have that issue. Tammy, is there any literature about that?
I threw in the chat because you did a podcast too with Dr. Todd Love on ADHD, but I threw the
Right.
webinar in, and I mean, I almost fell out of my chair when I was doing that webinar with him. So finding someone who is good and qualified, who gets addiction and ADHD is really key. But there are medications that can really help support that. But I want to talk to your I'm very tired. How do I hang on? And I think that I don't think it is, oh, now we have to wait for him to, no, like it's navigating what can you each, tolerate, how can you make little steps forward? They won't be as big a steps as you want or deserve even,
Yes.
but it's going to be like, but you're going to go, wait, we're making a little bit of progress. So I would encourage you to get real help, with the ADHD, but also be working with a qualified professional that can help you within the context of he has ADHD, so it's going to be really practical. It may be checklists like if you saw my desk right now, I have very mild ADHD.
I don't want to see your desk.
No, I work by notes. I have notes. I have checklists. I have to. That's how I do things. And it may be, for him, he doesn't get a pass. I've told this to other addicts because they're like, well, I have ADHD. I'm like, you're going to have to work harder. It's not that you get a pass. You have to work harder. You're going to have to do more to overcome that. So, so I want holding healthy boundaries for you, realistic boundaries, but also, like, okay, what can we do, to navigate both, like Dr. Robbins shared, okay, we have a dish for where the keys go. Well, what can you do? What can be set in place that is actionable for him and shows that there's progress being made, for the two of you. But, and, like the out of the doghouse, does help with, with
Empathy,
learning some
compassion.
empathy and how to rebuild trust. So that might be a good one for him too.
And I don't know, Tammy, how much you said to the spouse that they need to support themselves, but when I'm exhausted, what
Yes.
I'm saying, then I need to spend time with friends. I may need a weekend away. I need to go get a massage. I need to take sanity walks. Your exhaustion is not his responsibility. That is your responsibility. And you guys may do things together that leave you feeling exhausted, but your exhaustion is something you have to take care of. And just because he gets better, does all the right things, doesn't mean that you're not going to be exhausted. You have to figure out, how am I going to take better care of myself so I don't get so overwhelmed and exhausted? And I'll tell you, if you go to some of the women's groups, you will hear a lot about what other women are doing to get the support so that they are not so tired. Well, go ahead. I have thoughts, but I'll let them go.
No, and you're right. And, like I've had we've had a health situation that's going really well in our household, but wow, I mean, I'm a person of high energy and I hit the couch on Saturday afternoon. I hit the couch.
Good.
I needed to, and it was okay. Like, you know what, all the other stuff could wait. So at some point, yeah, the self-care, what do I need? And again, if, like, if he is your only focus, which I'm not saying it is, but if he's your only focus, how do you find joy in life? And how do you have support, and connections that are meaningful for you, kind of despite or regardless of what he's doing? Like, the gap stays, but if you're getting nurtured and supported over here, and it's a little problematic, but it isn't like, oh my gosh, I'm devastated, So I think having that ability to, shift that helps a little bit. So, okay. So the next one, I'm going to edit a little bit because it's a little personalized. So can you see it?
I can.
Okay. So the sex addiction for this person involved objectification and sexualizing during the marriage, including with a family member that has passed away. The concern is that when this family member has come up, which I understand may not be the right time to discuss and heal. My husband sounds like he is still in his addiction with this family member. While my husband is at home working on his recovery, we have been advised by a marriage counselor and therapist to not bring up this loved one that passed away at all. What are your thoughts about his recovery in relation to this? So, and this will be a generalized answer.
Well, I don't think it's a therapist's job to tell me what to do or not do. I think it's a therapist's job to, I wonder what happened if you did this way. I wonder what would happen if you did it that way. So I'm a little concerned that you have a counselor and therapist who says, don't do it this way. You have a need to talk about this. Talk about this. And you know what? It is not your responsibility how it affects your addict. Sometimes a lot, we just think, well, if I did this and I did this and I don't do that, then they're not going to act out. That's up to them. And you know what? If he gets upset, if he gets overwhelmed, so what? I just don't think you can take responsibility for how someone else feels. I think you need to do. Now, if he says, I'd like to talk about this next week or on the weekend when I'm off, or great. But I really do think that you must talk about what's going on with you. Now, let him say, yeah, forget the therapist. Let him say, I'm overwhelmed. I'm not sure I can talk about it. Can we talk about it next weekend? Can you write down some questions and we'll just, or Tammy says, the Fanos, can we just check in each night about this? I do agree that you don't want to talk about it all day long. You don't want to bring it up over and over and over again. But if you have time together to check in with each other. So, part of it is I do get concerned when a therapist tells me to do or not do anything. Now, if I'm an addict, I want my therapist to say, I don't think it's such a good idea to drive down that street, or maybe just, that's a different kind of work. But for spouses, I think you need comfort and you need support in speaking about what you need to speak about. And you know what? None of us are so fragile or so broken or so troubled that we can't talk about stuff. We can either set a boundary or we can take our butt to a meeting and deal with it. But I think you need to say what you need to say. And I would do I wouldn't attack, I don't think that'll be helpful. But I do think, really saying this is still in my mind. It's hurtful to me. I need some time. I just think that you have an absolute right to do that. Tammy, do you have any
I
thoughts
do,
about
because
this?
I see by my marriage counselor and therapist, and I don't hear by my trained marriage counselor and therapist who knows how to work with addiction. Most therapists have very limited training on addiction as a global topic. They have a little tiny bit. So even fewer have training for these particular issues, which are so complicated. So I used the analogy a little while ago about, if you got cancer, you want the cancer specialist. If you don't want your general practitioner, even if you love your general practitioner, you want people who are really trained. So this makes me wonder if the marriage counselor is trained to work in these specific issues, and to help navigate that, because it's very different work, working from a behavioral standpoint than it is, the general grieving talk therapy type of thing, which has its place. We appreciate all of those things. But in this, if people ask me for a non-trained sex addiction trained therapist, I was like, other than my personal therapist and a handful of people I know, I don't know them. That's not the world I live in. So the world I live in is this work. So I know lots of people in this area. But, if somebody's just looking for a regular, I've got depression therapist, I'm out, so I know who to call.
Trauma.
Yeah.
I do want to say one more thing to
Mm-hmm.
you, which is my concern is when this issue comes up, which I understand may not be the right time to discuss and heal myself. My spouse starts to sound like he's still in his addiction. I think you can say to your husband, I want to be able to talk about this without you bringing that part up. You know, you can set a boundary for yourself. It doesn't matter what he has to say, and say, I want to talk about the issue, but I don't want to hear about this part because it doesn't make sense to me and it's too hurtful. And you can set the boundaries around the conversation. So two things. One, we are never, ever, and spouses, please, we are never responsible for someone else's acting out. You can never make me drink. You can make me miserable, but the choice to go out and act out is mine. And so not I don't encourage being accusatory, but when you're talking about your feelings, you can never go wrong. And he can set a boundary if he wants. So what you got,
Okay, one
Tammy?
more question, and then we'll have completed the list. My husband really feels like he's done everything possible that I've asked him to do. He's starting to resent me because my boundaries make him feel controlled. I've asked him to leave his rock band because one member had porn on his phone in our house with our kids here, and it was also taking up family time. But things like not being on Facebook and just things that keep me safe, he feels controlled. He says he sacrificed everything for the family, yet none of, I know that's what I was thinking too, can talk about feelings. Going to church, getting clean was the sacrifice, and we just won't be grateful, he says. Any emotional communication to him means negativity, and he translates it into me telling him something is wrong with him. Is this normal for him to really think he's done everything he can? He feels burned out, but I don't see how. He can't talk about recovery and growing and intimate conversations because he feels it's just work, work, work.
Tammy, you want to start with that one? I
Oh,
think
I
you
hear emotional immaturity. I hear like,
gaslighting.
oh yeah, I was gonna say, and like blame shifting, like this is all your fault. You've done, and oh, you just don't understand all the work that I've done, and I've sacrificed everything. I've given up everything meaningful, like Facebook in my life, No, like if he was, so if, I've shared before, Dr. Rob did a great podcast with Dr. Stan Ken called We Do. In a healthy relationship, it's we put the relationship focus first, not me, in capital M-E. It was what I hear about him is me. I want to do what I want to do. I'm going to have a tantrum about it, which sounds like, if he's not acting out, I'll be surprised, because like that feels very much like I'm in active addiction because it's all about me and I'm having a tantrum. Everybody's trying to control my life. So anyway, Dr. Rob, what are your
Well, I
thoughts?
want to say that addicts forget that we destroyed your life. Like, your conversation makes me feel emotionally upset, or I feel a little challenged, or I'm tired of hearing about it. Hello, you slept with 300 sex workers. Like, you're telling me that I don't have a right, or I'm upsetting you. So this is someone who should have taken out of the doghouse workshop. Apparently, empathy has escaped this person entirely. I did this to you. You have a right to be angry and upset and demand things of me for a long time. And by the way, I can set a boundary and say, I don't want to talk about tonight, but can we talk about it next weekend? But this is gaslighting. By the way, the last two questions are very similar, which is you are not responsible. The addict can say, let's sit in couples therapy and talk about that. I don't feel safe talking about that together. This is for a couples therapist. They've been in recovery a while. You're in a place where you want to talk about things with both of you, and you need some help as a couple to work on these things. But now there's a difference saying, I'm really concerned, I'm really worried about it, I don't feel safe, I'm angry, and saying, you mofo. Those are very different things. If you attack me, I'm going to back away from you and I'm going to say, leave me alone. And I have a right to. If you invite me to have a conversation, by the way, I do hope that this partner knows how devastating that is when you feel like you can't talk about things or you're being told. We have a word, by the way, for this particular issue. It's called narcissism, which is I come first and I don't like being criticized. And when are you going to give me a break? And I've been working so hard, and look at all the things me, as Tammy said, it's all about me. And that lacks empathy. And again, that's what Doghouse is about. How can I do things that will leave you feeling safer and better about our relationship? And maybe it is, I'm just going to have to talk about things I don't want to talk about. Well, too effing bad. So anyway, I want to encourage your spouses overall to not feel responsible for us in terms of our acting out or our moods. We have to set those boundaries for ourselves. We have to be honest and clear. It's okay to say, I don't want to talk about this now. How about Saturday? Can I say this before we stop? I just had a big issue in my marriage because it came up that I've been asking for things and it seems to take 2 months before they get done. And so what I said was, could you just let me know how long it will take? If you say it's going to be done in a month, great. But if you don't tell me, I'm going to nag and nag and nag and nag and nag. That's not who I want to be. So in a way, we had to find a different way to manage it and communicate about it before we could, it was not going to be resolved with, well, when are you going to do this? And how about that? And we had to find a bigger plan to manage things. And I think that there are ways to talk about this and create a larger, one more thing. When it's about the situation in the moment, I think it's hard. What I got back was, well, I didn't do this and I didn't do that. And I said, can we just stop and talk about the big issue, which is whatever it is, just give me a time, rather than my nagging, complaining, and why haven't you done it? And so sometimes little things make a big difference, and you might need to set different boundaries for the relationship, but that doesn't mean that that they're not going to deal with at all. So do I have to feed my dog now, Tammy?
You can, but I threw a couple things in the chat. The previously recorded webinars, Debbie McCrae did one on accountability, the 10 things. And, that would be, here's the list. Show me that you're accountable. That's really helpful. And then Eddie Caparucci often talks about, men showing up, being mature enough to tolerate uncomfortable feelings and, difficult conversations. And I think both of those could be useful too. So thank you, Dr. Rob.
And by the
Thanks,
way,
everybody.
Tammy mentions a lot of names, but people love Eddie's work. They love, and we have webinars and information from, he's just really great, and especially great for couples. So I do recommend you go on our site and find some of his work. All right, Tammy, take care of yourself
everybody. Thank
and
you.
your loved one. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.